opportunity of growth. Like obviously, like if I make a stupid mistake, I'm like, why did you do that? Da, 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 da. Like I do have that conversation with myself, but when I come back to training the next day, it's more of like refresh, reset. And I think that's really important to do, because if you just dwell on it and dwell on it and dwell on it, which I do sometimes, I'm gonna be honest, but it doesn't do any benefit for you if you're just dwelling on it and not doing anything about it.
Hello and welcome to the Reflective Coach podcast with Coach Luca. In this episode, I'm delighted to welcome professional footballer Melissa Garcia. Within this episode, I was able to speak to her about her journey, her experiences, how she combines coaching with playing, her journey, what her outlook is on the future, where she currently is now, the impact upon relationships, dynamics amongst teammates, her impact on the game and what she wants to leave in terms of the future, how she operates in terms of on and off the football pitch, her position and how she plays. And we covered things such as visualisation, the journey, how to be loyal as a teammate, loyal to the club that you're with, and what attributes that she demonstrates and what she would like from her teammates as well. She would like to be honest with her teammates, and she'd like to control the factors beforehand when going into games. Controlling these factors is a big benefit, especially when it comes into visualisation, and having the opportunity to go into games knowing that you're prepared and that you're going in mitigating the circumstances, so limiting what could prevent you from scoring and allowing you to focus entirely on your game when you're out there to perform at your optimum best when you're out there. She talked about fitting in, cultural normalities and habitats in terms of what habits can work in that environment and how that fits in. And everyone's in their own habitat, in their own sense, whether they're sat there and how they think about things in the dressing rooms, how they comprehend the game, how they take on feedback, and everyone sort of reflects in their own certain ways. But these habits are so important. It was great to talk to Melissa as she talked about breaking through the normalities, the change of environment, breaking the cookie mould as such, which is a quote that I really loved by her. So she talked about going out and experiencing the world, not just growing up in this environment and following the routines and maintaining the same lifestyles you're brought up on. Break away from it, go out, experience your own journey, experience different things, enjoy life while you're out there. It's not easy being a professional footballer, especially for a female. You know, the game is continuously growing right now and money needs to be pumped in. Crowds are growing and therefore the sustainability, revenue and commercial value is certainly rising, which is great, especially as I speak to other female professional footballers. But when it comes out there, they don't have the best logistics in terms of where they live and stay. They're having to look at short and temporary contracts, they're continuously on the move. Then there's other factors which play in, but this is all part of the game and something which is a huge concern around the game at the minute. And as much as it's a continuous highlight, we don't want to keep continuously highlighting it too much, take away from these amazing experiences. And when we talk away, breaking away from that cookie mold, it's more about going out and enjoying life. And as much as there are these concerns and variables, go out and enjoy it, experience different things, meet new people, grow abroad. Melissa was talking about being supportive of the teammates, especially as strikers, as a striking partner, to create opportunities. She sees everything as an opportunity, and she sees it as a supporting element, especially with strikers, rather than a competing element, which is fantastic. Everyone's geared in their own way to perform and wants to be on their best, wants to be out there playing, wants to be out there scoring, wants to be out there creating their own journey. But what a fascinating teammate and insight in terms of a mindset in being more supportive than competitive and creating that fantastic relationship amongst the closest strike partners, for example. You know, if a striker isn't scoring, as Peter Crouch said, that he would be riled up by it, but would also be supportive of his teammates whilst he was on the bench. And it's quite tough because as you see another striker scoring, that takes away your minutes and your time out there on the pitch. And you know, if time is being taken away from you, then you can be at the end of your career before you know it. But it was great. He spoke about his time at Spurs, and we related to this in this conversation. And this is how this came up in terms of being supportive rather than competing with your teammates, which is a really interesting contrast to take away. Melissa was fantastic. She talks about taking everything in her stride, and talks about objective setting, which is so important, which allows her to stay focused, to stay on top of her game and not to overcomplicate, again relating to that visualization, preparation and controlling normalities before the game, mitigating needs, concerns or things that might be out of her control. But she certainly does take everything in her stride. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to her. I'm so glad we could have her on the podcast, and I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed talking to Melissa. You can find the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Anchor and Podcast Addict. All you need to do is drop a follow, drop a subscribe and drop a like. It will be very much appreciated. If you'd like to engage, just drop a comment as well. Always looking to increase the amount of conversation, feedback and networking out there. And if you'd like the feature, all you need to do is just drop me a message across one of the social media channels. But again, it's a thank you from me. Enjoy this episode, and you can find it across the multiple platforms. For me, it's Coach Luca, the Reflective Coach Podcast.
Sorry?
I'm good. You okay?
I'm good.
Good. Glad. How's your day going?
Good. I've just been cleaning, and the weather's really not great. So, I'm waiting till it clears up a little bit.
Oh, yeah?
Go outside. How about you?
Yeah, it's been alright. It's not too bad. It's about 5 o'clock here in the UK, so I've just took my granddad to the hospital this morning and just done a couple of podcast things. So it's been a varied day.
Is he doing okay?
Yeah, he's doing alright. He's just had to go for an x-ray, feeling a little bit better today than he was yesterday, and just going to wait a couple of weeks for some results now and find out what it is really. So
that's always hard.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, on to the podcasts and stuff, which is good because, you know, sort of distracts things like that in life away when we can get into, you know, this escape route into sport and what it is. So
yeah.
So you know, it's great to have you on, and it's great to talk, you know, soccer and football. And you've had such a great journey when I've been reading through and everything that you have. And you know, if we had to put a price tag on you, I'm sure it'd be very high. So you're currently back in Cali. Is that in between a break or?
I've been home for 2 months because I got done in Iceland, and then I had to go back to Australia to finish my course that I was in, and then I came back home. So we're like in off season, and then we have our preseason tournament starting in February.
Yeah, because I was going to say, but you've been like back and forth Australia and Iceland a few times now, and you know, it's a great journey to have had and been out to so many different countries, especially coming from Cali and then being able to go back home to California. So, you know, just having those experiences are really cool in itself, I suppose.
Yeah, I love it. Love it so far. It's a great way to travel, and then I like the fact that it's not just like visiting country, you're actually like living in the culture, so you get to learn a lot, which I like. That's like one of my favorite things about it.
Yeah, of course, and you know, especially, you know, you could be 35, then you might decide to settle down and have a family at that point, and then that could be, you know, the next 30 years or whatever. But at least between, say, 20 and 30, you could say, I've been around all these different countries, I've experienced this, I've lived in the cultures, I've met these people, I've followed my dream and passion of being a professional footballer, I've done all this as a footballer, and it's a great way to sort of experience a great part of your life before you get tied down and not be able to have the time to do those things as well.
Exactly. You create such unique connections. I think that's the best way to put that. That when I come home, it's so different because you see kind of like where you fit in like normal habits and like cultural normities that we have in America aren't in Australia or aren't in Iceland. So you become more well-rounded as a person as well.
Which is a great sort of concept to sort of look at it in a great perspective, because sometimes we can get too settled in ourselves, too settled in terms of our environment, and as Rio Ferdinand says, you're a product of your environment, and that's something that's really stuck in my mind and lives with me, and something that I want to change and try to change as much as possible, and try and get out, maintain some routines, but try and get out of routine and experience different things and have an open mindset and learn so much, because we become too restricted to what's around us, what's normality, and we don't go out and see and meet other people or live in different cultures, which could change and open up our mind and just ourselves so much more.
Exactly, because like I've never been like cookie cutter in certain ways, so it's like Australia, like I fit into the culture really well. I just love it there, honestly, because it's so pretty too. But the people are great, and with like Iceland, it's like a complete 180 almost. Like they're very like they want things done. They're very like if you're on the other side of the island, we will come and drive and get you. Like doesn't matter how long it takes. So it's just and the football is different too. So it's just interesting changing your style of play and growing as a player and like language barriers and understanding how to deal with that because I feel a lot of times sometimes in America like we're not tolerant of those kinds of things like English isn't their first language or whatever and so being able to bridge that gap is huge because you've been in that experience you know how to help and it just brings the team more together versus like we bring I don't know for example in Australia this year we had a girl from Japan and she barely spoke English but trying to find like ways to communicate with each other and like making her feel like you're part of the team. You're not just like a person that's coming to training. I feel like that's a really big part of football that is starting to that needs to grow a little bit more too. But I love that part of it because you get to meet so many cool people.
And that's great because you get to meet so many great people. But as you say, it's how you bring that team together and create that togetherness and integrate people. And coming from the outside like you have as well, you can really emphasise with those who are coming from countries like Japan or other countries where they're coming in because you've been through that journey as well and you are a team captain or have been team captain in the past as well, so having all those experiences and skills to do that really helps you as a captain then to grow the team around you, which is another great concept in terms of what football and the team can bring.
Exactly.
And when you say changing your style because of the experiences in different countries, do you find that hard to adapt to or change, or is that something that you can quite easily get into a routine of doing now because you've been around different countries and that?
It depends. Like what it's really done is really helped me kind of identify what suits me best, I guess. Like Australia will be depending who we have, but really good possession for the most part. And then, but technical sometimes is lacking because a lot of the girls we play like futsal throughout season or in the off season. So they generally have a good touch, but it's more of like the drive. I guess the intensity isn't always there. So it's a little bit more fun, and then play it out. Iceland is very direct. Like it's fast paced. Like you have no time to think. Like you just need to go. Albania was more like possession, but not as much creativity. And then Mexico's a lot focused on football and not so much the physical aspect. So it's just what it's really done for me is really solidified like what suits me best. Because I like when I was in Albania, it was very I'm a very true 9, so in the middle, and we're playing a 3-5-2, and I'm good at my runs and my through balls, and I was just like, why isn't this clicking as easy as I want? And we ended up doing like a drill with through balls, and we couldn't send a through ball. So I'm just like, okay, like this isn't my style, and that's okay. And I've never really had that realization before. But what I like the most about the different styles is it really makes you more versatile depending on where you go. So like this past season I played 9, 7, 11. I played the 6 sometimes, 10, 8. Like I was just everywhere. And that challenged me a lot because I'm like, I'm good at all these things, but I can't figure out where I'm fitting right now. But I ended up in Iceland playing a false 9-10. So I was kind of like a free player, and I had never done that before. And I was like, wow, I really like this. So it makes like you said, like it makes your mind change because you can't be like, I'm just a 9. You can't just be like that. Like it doesn't work for me at least.
Of course, and it's great to be versatile and develop so many different positions and to play in them because you get to learn so many different things about these positions, and then you become more versatile, fit into different systems. If a new manager comes in or you have to make a move to a different country, and then suddenly you find yourself in a situation where you have to adapt. But sometimes can that be overstimulating and tough in itself, where you're being overloaded with information and having to adapt continuously?
It can be. I definitely was struggling with that this year, changing positions all the time. Because it's just, you have to understand the role, and then that role within the team is also going to be different, and how the coach wants you to be doing that role. So I definitely was challenged with that this year because I've just been playing 9. But I mean, I never like see anything as like frustrating. I just want to grow from it, and kind of look at it as more of an opportunity more than anything.
Which is great, and looking at it as an opportunity is fantastic. But sometimes, fans and those from the outside can be quick to judge players because they're like, well, Melissa might have scored 10 goals last year, but this year she's only scored 2. And you're like, well, she could be playing in a completely different system. She could be playing in a different position. The teammates around her have changed. And we don't always look at the bigger picture to really understand the performance of a player, or maybe why they haven't performed in certain ways that they were last year, but their performance levels have altered in other areas that were lacking, in terms of creating assists, where you might be receiving balls more direct and scoring, but then this year you're getting that balance where you're scoring less but you're getting more assists. It's, really different concepts to look at it, but it's quite interesting to try and look at the big picture, which fans don't always do.
Yeah, exactly. And I was definitely struggling with that, like, personally, because I was like, I'm not scoring as much, like, goals that I normally score, I wasn't scoring. But I was doing a lot more in the build-up, in the play, in, like, defending. So I had to, like, kind of take a step back of, like, I'm a striker, I score all the time. Like, you're doing more than just what's put on the result sheet, because the results wouldn't have happened if you weren't on the field, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can become accountable for quite a lot then, and under scrutiny, and it's difficult then when you're under scrutiny, because then you're trying to find it within yourself to realign your motivations, or go, do you know what, I am performing this way, but you're not looking at it, and it's a difficult sort of circle to be in, because everything then surrounds you, and your circle can be quite filled with everything that's going on. So from a psychological mindset, it can really affect you, and then everything else can take shape as a result of that. Is there ways that you cope with the stresses and external environments that come into play then, or?
The thing that mostly helps me is, like, I go to the wall and do touches. Like, especially if it's, like, scrutiny, I'm like, okay, like, I just find it therapeutic to do, like, that technical work. And then this year we had some dogs at the house, so, like, I would go walk the dogs and just try to get away from football. That was more of a struggle this year, because I usually will coach as well, because I do strength and conditioning. So this year was a men's team, helping with the senior men's, all the juniors, a girls team. So it was, like, hard to get that separation of, okay, I'm done coaching, I'm done with that part of football, now I have to go perform on the field. I often struggle with that because I work a lot with coaching. But, like, taking walks has been nice, and doing, like, the technical work, but I'm still growing in that area. I don't know how to separate the two yet, if I'm being honest.
And it's interesting concepts, because trying to separate the two, when you, especially when your life is driven by sport, and being in that environment because you are coaching, and it gives a good concept and full-time capacity. It's hard to sort of get away from it and break away, because a lot of footballers, it is all about training performance, reflections. Then you're going to have meetings with coaches. Then you might do one-to-one training. Then you have specialised training. Then games coming up. You're travelling, so you're constantly on the move and constantly thinking about it. But just to switch off and get away from it can be so important at times, and can really just help breathe and go and start again.
Because it often feels like sometimes overwhelming when it builds up, and it's, like, more of, like, the negative stuff. But I feel like it's so important to find whatever you channel that in, because I've always done it as, like, running, like, or going to the gym. Like, I like doing that, but when I'm in season, I can't do that because I'm overtraining. So it's been a really big period of growth for me, trying to not do that. So, like, a walk is fine, because, like, especially in Iceland, it's so pretty. You just go out for a walk and it's nice. But it's so important, I think, for every footballer to have that separation, because I know for me it's so difficult.
And it's important to find that separation, and especially when you are away abroad, and make the most of the great landscape and scenery that's out there. But people might look at it, from a fan perspective and go, you know what, you're living the high life, you're travelling around the world, you're playing football, you're earning money, and that's what's associated with football. But then you're balancing a full-time job, you're travelling back on the off-season, then you're having a strict diet and routine, and then there's so much going on within your personal life. It's not the fancy life which is always out there, and I think that's an important concept and perspective to consider, is how it looks from a player perspective, because you do go through so much to make your career what it is and to enjoy it, and it's not always the fancy high life. And you do get the high moments, and it's great that you're pro and you've been top goal scorer, you're winning titles, promotions, and experience in the world, but it's not as easy on the eye as it is made out to be at times.
Oh, definitely. It is not what it looks like from the outside at all. It's a lot, and it's a lot of sacrifice. I mean, the amount of challenges and changes and setbacks and self-doubt, like, it's overwhelming. And traveling, and like in Iceland, we're in a tiny little town at the top of the island. It's 4 hours to drive to Reykjavik and back. So it's like an 8-hour trip, game day. So it's not great as it sounds, but I wouldn't do it any other way. Like, I know I would never be fulfilled. I wouldn't be happy. I wouldn't be satisfied. And it's like kind of like your life's work, like your identity. And so all the bad stuff or inconvenient stuff and the sacrifices totally make it worth it, because when you look back, like, you're never going to regret it.
And that's great that you do look at it that way, because you don't want to regret it and you want to enjoy it. And it's about, what identifies with you, because that's so important to take away. And we feel fulfilled because of it, and the journey that we're on, and giving up these moments, and going through what people don't see is that 8-hour travel and being on the bus, and even though they've just seen 90 minutes of a game, they haven't seen that 8 hours which you've just put in to travel back and forth and then get home later, etc. But then, when you look at it, it's difficult even to take away, because you've lived in America, you've gone through an amazing system where you've had this opportunity to become a pro because of it. You've got fantastic education behind you, but then you've had to leave an amazing country like America to source opportunities elsewhere around the world, which is difficult, because then it takes you away from home. As much as it opens you up and you have those experiences, you are having to leave family behind you, leaving your normalities, your friends, and you're having to go, oh, I have to leave to try and make this work, or find a source where it will allow it to work, for example.
Yeah, but that has been probably the most difficult challenge with my family, because no one's really an athlete. Like, don't fit the mold of my family at all on either side. But until recently, they've started to understand and be more supportive. And like, I've been with my boyfriend since we're like 21, and he's been like the big driver, like, you can go do it. 'Cause like, I didn't start my career until I was like 28, 27, because I did the school thing. And I was like, because after college I had enough. Like, not enough. I was not happy. So I took years off of football and I started playing, but I was still training. And so I was just like, in the back of my head, I wanted to keep playing, but like, I just wasn't doing it. So I did the work thing. I know I'm good at what I do. But he was a big driver on like, go do it and go try. And he helps, like, with my mom, we call him like the translator, because like, I'll say something and she hears something completely different, but if he says the same exact thing, she hears it. But it's been a lot of pushback oftentimes, because it's like, you're not here for this, you're not here for that. Like, this, since I've been home, I've been training every morning, so I can't go do this and go do that. I can't go out and drink or whatever my friends want to do. And that's just, I mean, I'm more dedicated to myself. And I just see that as more detrimental to me and like my progress. But I know, like, my family accepts it now and are more supportive, but that's been a really big challenge for me, because I see like my teammates call their mom and dad after a game, and they're like, oh my God, I was watching it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that's been really hard. And that's nothing against my family. It's just like they come from, you get your full-time job, you get a house, you get married, and you have kids. And I'm just going against the mold, and that's okay.
And it's great that you have such an open and insightful experience there, because it is, heart touching in a way. And when you sort of break it down and you strip it back into terms of just how your family approach it, how they look at it, it can be so difficult in terms of, not having that support at times and having a mold which they would have expected from you, and then you've gone against it. And it is difficult then to sort of try and gauge that with your family, because they might not understand what you're doing it and why you're doing it for. They're like, well, you travelled away, you're away from home, you're up late, you're putting this condition on your body and missing out on your friends, you're missing out on these concepts. And the money at times may differentiate, so you could be earning this if you've done this job and progressed, but in football you might have a real good contract here, then your contract might change. And sometimes people don't really understand it, and especially then when I share a very similar mindset. If it's detrimental to me, I don't do it. So, do I need to go out drinking? No, because my coaching is my priority on the Saturday. So I don't have the time to go out drinking like my friends would on a Friday. And it's hard then, because they don't understand that we're putting ourselves first to progress it. And then it changes that environment. And it can be a real difficult one to try and even get that balance with those closest to us.
Yeah, because I'm totally fine with, and I've been this way since I was in high school. I don't need to drink to hang out with you. I'm perfectly fine just hanging out with you, and if you want to drink, I don't care. That doesn't affect me. But I do have a couple friends that do understand it, that I played college with, and I'm so thankful for those relationships, because because in the season you get really busy and sometimes we don't connect as much as we want. But then when we do connect, they're like, I just love what you're doing. It's so cool and stuff like that. It's good to hear. It's almost like reassurance that you're doing the right thing. Even though you know it, but it's sometimes nice to hear, especially from those closest to you.
And just having the comments and the feedback and just little moments like that can really help, even if it comes from a coach or a fan as well. Just having a bit of feedback and a bit of positivity can really help open up our world so much. And especially, when we're going through the 8 hours of travel, just to have some feedback and sitting there reflecting and going, do you know what, I'm doing this and people are happy for me and I'm happy for myself. And it really helps connect those worlds even closer, which brings it together as to why you're on this journey, for example.
Exactly. And especially, I feel like those moments often happen when you're too caught up in your own head sometimes, or things are heavy. That just kind of pulls you out of that, and just okay, everything's okay.
And it's great that you have these experiences and you're with these teammates at the clubs that you are at, and you're forming these friendships. But then it can be sort of difficult then when you have these friendships or relationships with teammates, and then suddenly one player is then moving away for their own journey, or one's been sold, or one might transfer, or one has found another club, or their contract's expiring and it's not been renewed. That can be difficult then to even comprehend someone moving on. And when you're sat in the dressing room and you've got your chair there and you see the chair next to you empty, which was occupied by someone else, it can be really difficult in that aspect as well.
Oh, definitely, especially when it's someone you're really close with. Um, it's kind of oh, I lost my sister. But I always look at it as if it's a better opportunity for you, and if you're happy, you can't be upset about it or mad or anything like that. You just have to wish the best for them, because everyone's journey is unique. And if they're not happy, or that's just better for them and that's what they want, I'm a big believer in you just have to be supportive. That's all it is, because it's everyone's unique journey.
And it is great that you look at it that way, because the exact same could happen to you. Something might come along and it might be a better contract or a better offer, or your contract was coming to an end, you've been offered a more secure contract somewhere else, and then it's a better opportunity for you. And others might go, oh, you're chasing the money, or why is she getting this opportunity? And it's not, it's just what's been presented to you, and you have to take what's in front of you in life, because if you don't take certain opportunities, they might never appear again.
Exactly. And I had that experience this year, because I had to leave, I think, with 3-4 games left in Australia. But because I was so integrated in the coaching aspect and the team, and I love that team. It's great. And that was really difficult for me, because I'm very loyal. I want to see everything through, and I don't leaving the team or the coaching, like, in progress. Like, that was a big stressor for me to make that decision. But I knew ultimately, like, Iceland was the right decision to go and get them help get promoted. And if we get promoted to first division, there's an opportunity and da da da. But that was really hard on me to make those decisions. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand that, because I freak out. Like, I'm going to be completely honest. I get a lot of anxiety, and because I don't like disappointing people, but I can't disappoint myself. So it's just kind of finding that balance between the two. But I don't regret it at all. Iceland, especially with Tindastóll, has been absolutely amazing. Like, absolutely amazing. So I don't regret that at all.
And it's great that you have that, because you don't want to have that regret to yourself, because again, when you're like 40, or your life has progressed, you don't want to look back and go, do you know what, I let these people down, but where are these people now? But I'm the one who's missed out on it. And that's the way I sort of think about it. It's always later on in life and looking at big picture. Do I want to make a decision now that is going to impact the people around me, where I'm taking that consciously, that they're not going to be happy with it, but then I'm like, but it needs to come down to me, because when I'm sat later on in life, these people might not even exist in this world that I have around me at that point. So I need to make that decision that reflects what I will do and what will represent where I'm going to be in the future.
Exactly. And that's where I was really thankful for the family I live with when I'm in Australia. 3 of the sisters I play with, and my best friend there, she's always been like, you need to think about yourself and like what's best for you. So it's like, that's another layer on top of why it was hard to leave, because it's like comfort and it's another home, and I love them to death and their family, but they're also like, you need to make the best decision for you. And that type of relationships don't go away when you go abroad. And so abroad, I guess at that point, because it's Australia. But I'm really thankful for them, because they're very do what's best for you. And I always need that kind of reminder. So I'm thankful to have them as well.
And it's great to have that support and just people around you, and it again reflects back to those comments and that feedback that can be very beneficial. But we seem to be layering a lot of issues here, and because it ends up what's happening in terms of the sport. There are so many different things which you take into the contrast, then they sort of pile up, because you could be seen then on the flip side as, when you have taken this opportunity, you're then a new player walking into that changing room, and there might be a player looking at you going, you're taking my spot, or why are you here? And that then can be then another challenge in itself, even though you've taken a great opportunity. But then when you're out on the other side, you're being seen in that sort of context.
Exactly. And because I was coming in such a crucial time for Tindastóll, I literally got off the plane and I played half a game. And normally it takes me a while to like come out of my shell a little bit, but I literally walked, because I got off the plane, took a nap, and then we went to the field. And I just remember walking in the locker room and I was like, "Hi, I'm Melissa. Like, this is what we're doing. Like, great to meet you, blah, blah, blah." And I remember talking to our captain when I was leaving, and she's like, "I just really appreciate that, because you set everyone at ease, because you're like, this is me. How are you going? Like, let's go win this game." And I felt like that's something different that I did, that I don't normally do, because normally I'm just like quiet and I kind of see like where I fit in and stuff. But I'm learning like that's the easiest way to kind of break the ice, because often you're walking into this group of girls and they're like, "Who the heck are you?" And that's hard, because then you're like, "Oh my God, the coach is watching me. Like, I have to kind of earn their trust too, and see where I fit, and do I work in this team? Am I going to fit the system?" So there's a lot of worries, but it's almost like fake it till you make it, I guess. Then you kind of like settle in.
And there's so many variables, but it's great that you broke the ice and they could, build that trust, build that relationship with you, and see that you're an asset to them, rather than, someone who's taken away from them, that you're going to help bring them along as well. So it's great to sort of bring that togetherness naturally, because you've shown off the quality and performance that you have in terms of your ability.
Yeah, and I'm really big on the togetherness and the team. Like, I never see, like, say you and I are both strikers and we're going for the same spot, I would never be like mad at you or anything. Like, I just see like you're pushing me and I'm pushing you, like, and I don't really understand that clash, I guess, because I don't function like that. because at the end of the day, it's about us winning. And if you're performing better than me at that time, I'm happy for you, but I need to put in work as well. So, and I can learn off of you and we can learn off each other. But at the end of the day, like, it's about the team. And that's just like a really big driver for me, and why, especially at Tyndall, like, I love it's like an actual true team that I haven't experienced in a really long time. So it's really cool to be a part of.
And it makes it more rewarding then when you are part of that team, and you know, they're happy for you and you're part of that, because what you said there about two strikers, it reminds me when I was listening to the Peter Crouch podcast. He was a very good striker for Tottenham, and they had another good striker, Jermaine Defoe, and then they had a striker, Roman Pavlyuchenko. Now, when Peter Crouch said he was on a bench, he saw Jermaine Defoe start, he said he was more than happy for him. He said he was supportive, glad that he was scoring. They would be really good teammates because of it. But then if Roman was on a bench, he saw them start, Roman would absolutely hate it, wouldn't have much to say to them, wouldn't then have a great relationship in training. And they said they could never understand that sort of hate towards them because they were performing at their optimal best at that point to get started, for example.
Yeah, and I've experienced that as well, on against me, but it's like I would be the first person to be like, let's go do extras trainings together or something like that, because a lot of the times, like, I've been in that position where I'm like, well, why are they playing, like, whatever, but I stop myself because I'm like, there's something that the coach is seeing that I'm maybe not seeing, or they're fitting a little bit better. And it's more about, like, when someone's having that reaction, I feel like it's important to pay attention, like, especially the ones that aren't playing as much, like, they're just as important as everybody else that's on the field. And if you forget about those people, like, that just creates more toxicity, I guess, and really messes up the cohesiveness. And you really need to bring, if someone's feeling like that, you need to bring them in a little bit more and not be like just training, like, hey, let's go work together, because then they see it as not as a competition, but we're growing together.
And it's important to have that, especially as a pair of strikers, because if you'll be giving so much service, and you know, whether you're playing with two up front or whether it's just one up front, and someone's on a bench or you're playing alongside them, and you'll be giving that service, and maybe you haven't slotted away every chance in the game, or you've missed a few, you want them to be more supportive and go, do you know what, maybe you could do this next time, or keep going, it's going to get there, because it can be difficult at times because you are under pressure for many variations, whether the defenders press you out, or you're being pushed out on your weaker foot, or you find yourself in a constant wide position, and you maybe haven't taken every chance, whereas you might have done in the week before. And it's great just to have that support off them rather than that continuous criticism, because then it just leads to a breakdown between your relationship, then it impacts the team, and then the team dynamics change, and then you're not approaching the game in certain ways, and then it becomes quite difficult to comprehend that from then a management and coaching point of view. But if you have that supportive teammate, then you can address those issues between you.
Exactly, and it needs to be a conversation between the teammates, especially like strikers, especially like every striker is a little bit different. Some are good at in the air, some are good at 1v1s and taking it on, and it's finding that balance between the two. Like right now with Tyndall, like Mur is our main 9, our target. She's very good at bringing it down and dribbling, and she's terrific at it. So I know that that's not one of my strengths. I can bring it down, but I'm not going to dribble through everyone. I'd rather play it out. So it's learning how do we blend those together, and it's not, oh, you're better than me and da 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 da. Like it can't go there ever. If you want your team to be successful and you want to be successful at the end of the day, it's more of, okay, I'm watching how she does it, and then how do I implement that to my game, and then vice versa. And that just, at the end of the day, makes us better players.
And it's great that you want to make yourselves better, and you know, you can complement each other's skills, and the way that you realise that she might do something that's a little bit different to you, and you go, I'm never going to do that, or that's not really the biggest strength of my game. It's great that she can, and I can do this, and then it becomes more rewarding, as you say, for each other. And then you play to each other's strengths, and it might lead to more goals between you because you're bouncing off one another.
Exactly, and it's understanding how each other play. I'm really observant, I guess that's the best way to say. Like, I know what my wingers are strong at. I know what my 6s are strong at. I know what my 8's strong at. I know what Mur's strong at. I know what my center backs are strong at. So it's learning where can I be most effective for them, And then, so I'm able to receive the ball and move forward, or if it's just creating space. Like, for example, in training the other day, like, I remember, like, in the middle of playing, I went to go cross, but I saw the girl on the back post. I'm like, I can hit that. But I remember her saying the day before, I don't like to head the ball. And I was like, okay, well, I can't play it to her. And so I slotted it back, and then we, like, scored from there. And it's just, like, remembering those things, like, because if I send a cross in the air, she's not going to head it. So it's just going to be a wasted opportunity where I can just kind of slot it, and we have two people at the top of the box, and we can finish. So it's understanding, on top of thinking wherever all the defense is, my touch, dribbling, the space around me, anticipating. It's also remembering little things like that. It's so complex, and I feel like that usually gets kind of lost.
Of course, and those little things, as you say, are really important, and it's demonstrated there. And if you can complement your teammates, which you're doing really well, then it's great. But when it comes down to you as a striker, what kind of striker would you describe yourself as? Would you describe someone as a goal poacher, so as soon as the ball comes in, you're netting it, or really aggressive by running at them, or how would you describe your style of play if you were reflecting on yourself?
I love finishing in the air, like with my head. Like, I just love it. It's my favorite thing in the world. Um, Anything in the box, if it's not going in the back, then I'm at least getting something on it. I like receiving out of the air. I don't know. Everything in the air. I just love the air. But making my runs and then creating space. And I'm also like the one that's like, I will press. Like, if you tell me to go press, I will. But I would just say my runs, pressuring in the air, and then just kind of building up with my 10 or the outside. I don't like to bring it down myself and just go unless I absolutely have to. I'd like to bring my team in and up with us. That's just how I see it. But I'd say those are my strengths, I guess.
And in that sense, then, when it comes to in the air and you like to try and challenge for that or score, do you set yourself like a target or challenge then to go, oh, I'm going to get 10 headers in this year, or?
No, I just love it. Like, if it's coming in the air, I will most likely get my head on it. And I've been that way since I was little. I don't know why. Because I feel like when you set expectations, like, I'm going to score 10 headers, and if you don't, like, you go, I don't know, for me, I'm like very, like, I want to do by the numbers, but as long as it goes in the back of the net at the end of the day and we win, I don't care. But yeah, I love finishing in the air. It's my favorite thing.
And it's great because sometimes we don't have to set targets, and I feel that players set too many targets, too many objectives for themselves. Then it comes a case of overcomplicating it, and then it ends up being detrimental rather than beneficial because they're focusing too much on a target. And I know, for example, working with young players, when a parent says to them, I'll give you £1 for every goal you score, then suddenly you can see the players' eyes lighting up and they want to score 50 goals, but then it's really detrimental because all that player wants to do is score, which is great, but then they're not passing when they should be, or they're trying to take on 4, 5, 6 players rather than pass and go and then receiving it elsewhere. And then it becomes too much of an objective and they overcomplicate it, and then it ends up reflecting that their performances declined rather than increased.
Exactly. And I definitely experienced that this year, like when I wasn't playing just 9. So I was like, I should be scoring. Why am I not scoring? And I'd be having a good game, and like, everything was good, but I didn't score. And my brain was just like, what's wrong? So I've had to really, like, reel back, because I'm usually not like that. And I was like, reel back, like, you're fine, you're playing good, like, just enjoy it. Because I agree, like, it's more complex than you just scoring. As a striker, of course, you're expected to score. But if you have a hand in developing that goal and you win, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because it's about the team, it's not about you.
Of course, and as you keep saying, it's that teamship which is really important. And once you start developing those relationships, you have that trust, you get more outside of each other, then it's really going to benefit you and how you move forward, which is really important. And again, it's important not to set those objectives and targets, and it's what works for each and every player. But when it comes to a game, do you alter your mindset? Do you get in a frame that you have to work in a strategy approaching game day, or is it just, here's a game, this is what I'm going to do?
It depends. Like, for our last season game for Tindastol, like, I had to man mark their 6, which I don't normally man mark anybody because I'm not a defender. But I remember having a lot of anxiety, and I was talking to my assistant coach about it. I'm like, why am I so nervous for this game? Like, there's no need to be nervous. I just need to make sure she doesn't get the ball. So I think it's like when I'm having weird objectives asked of me, that's when I'm like, oh my God, like I've never had to do this before, really. But I usually try to just visualize before the game, like having good first touch, like laying off, like turn and go. That's something that's really been helping me, and I've been trying to implement over the last couple of years, and it's helped a lot because I notice like when I don't do it, I'm like more frazzled, I guess. But once I get in the game, I'm usually like focused. So it's just kind of controlling the factors beforehand.
And that's an important concept to sort of take away, is controlling those factors beforehand, because you know sometimes we can go into a game and we haven't thought about the variables, we haven't thought about those factors, and it fits in nicely because Harry Kane, a striker again for Tottenham, he talks about visualization, and everything that he visualizes is how he's going to score, how he's going to put things away, and it's led to him having that more success in terms of when he is scoring. And there's no defined science around it, but it is showing that once you visualize yourself doing something, it leads to you doing it a lot more. So do you visualize yourself scoring goals, or again does it just come naturally to you when you're playing?
It depends, honestly, because if it's pretty much if I turn my brain off, I'm good. But like I'll visualize scoring, I'll visualize it going in the back of the net. But I feel like I visualize more of like the build-up play, especially now that I'm not playing the traditional 9. That's more anxiety for me because I feel like there's expectations of 10 and stuff like that that I don't normally have. So it's more of like receiving and turning in a different area of the field versus like I only have the center backs, now I have everyone around me. So that's been more of like the focus on that. But when I'm in the area, I think I just go off instinct, to be honest.
And that's really interesting because, as you say, you switch off there, and it really works for you because you're doing what's natural to you, and you're not overcomplicating it. You're not setting yourself this objective target, but then you're visualizing what you might do out of possession and in that transition, or how you might receive the ball when you're turning, because that build-up play is really important to you, and then how you execute that will end up leading to those goals naturally. So if you know if you're playing a different position to that 9 and you're having to be out wide more than usual, and you have to beat this player, or you know that's the player in front is going to be a challenge, but you know your wing back might overlap you, and then you can play the ball off, or you've got the centre mids to build back up and break the line. You know, that's quite an interesting concept to sort of visualise the build-up play, which is quite interesting to take away.
Yeah, because I feel like we won't move forward if we don't do that, because I'm not the last player. I can't just beat the 2 players and go. I have to, like you said, break the lines. Sometimes I'm the penetrating person playing the penetrating pass, and now I need to get into the box. So it's just it's more setting up and more creativity that I have to draw from, which has been really fun to do and train, versus like just doing finishing and traditional 9 things. So I've really been growing, especially this year, as a player.
And it's great, and I hope you continue growing, because you know it's all about that continuous growth, which is beneficial to you. And although you say that you switch off, and it really does help you, and do you find when you lose or you had a performance that you're not happy with, do you find it really easy to switch off then at that point?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I remember one of our games this year, it was like our only loss in Australia, and I like literally watched the game like 5 times, and I'm like over-analyzed every little bit of it. But regardless of the score, I usually like to analyze. It's more like stop and why did I make this decision here? Because there's like certain key plays that I'm like, oh, I lost it here, and why did I lose it? And so I like, regardless if it's a win or a loss, like I really like to go back and rewatch the film and reflect on it. But definitely when you have a hard game and you weren't happy with it, I need a day. And then I'm back to normal.
Because it can be hard to switch off from a game, and sometimes you can, as you say, overanalyze it and you're reflecting on it. But sometimes that can be beneficial. But sometimes walking away from some games and going, do you know what? we can just move on to the next one can really work, because sometimes we do overanalyze things. But yeah, it's interesting to see how, the different concepts in terms of your mind works, in terms of how you can't switch off from that game, and you've had to really analyse it and keep watching it, to switching off when you're in the box, but then building up the play. It's a real good, sort of up-down system in terms of the way that your psychology sort of reflects there. As a player, it must be so interesting to work with from a coaching capacity. I'm fascinated by the way that you approach your game.
Yeah, I always just see it as an opportunity of growth. Like, obviously, like, if I make a stupid mistake, I'm like, why did you do that? Da, 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 da. Like, I do have that conversation with myself, but when I come back to training the next day, it's more of like refresh, reset. And I think that's really important to do, because if you just dwell on it and dwell on it and dwell on it, which I do sometimes, I'm going to be honest, but it doesn't do any benefit for you if you're just dwelling on it and not doing anything about it. And I feel like that happens a lot, especially like with sometimes when I'm coaching. Like, I'm like, dude, like, it happened like a week ago. Like, just let it go, because now we've addressed it throughout the week, and now just go do it. So that's why I'm really thankful for having like the coaching perspective as well, because I can sometimes take a step back and be like, okay, like, this is what you're saying to your athletes, but you're not saying it to yourself. So it's very an interesting dynamic sometimes.
And it certainly is an interesting dynamic. And, when you look at your sort of background, you do a lot of strength and conditioning. And so when it comes to training, when it comes to the fitness component side of it, approaching that must be completely fine, because you take it in your stride and it's something that interests you. Whereas when you coach some players and you work with them, they absolutely hate the fitness side of things.
Yeah. I usually say, like, some of the best players are the worst ones in the gym, because it usually happens, like, the ones that are like awkward and sometimes can't, it just takes a really long time, but they're usually the best players. But I find peace in, and that's just me. But I think now that the way the game's evolving, I guess that's the best way to put that, you have to do it. You have to do your gym work. It's becoming more physical, and not just physical, but like the demand. If you're not strong, you're just setting yourself up for failure. And I'm not like gym, but there needs to be definitely a balance of keeping yourself healthy, because throughout the season, like, you're gonna get knocks, you're gonna get little icky, sore, whatever. But is that going to progress into a worse injury where you're not available to play? And it's, to me, I like coaching in that area more, because I like being the support system of, I'm not in control of your playing time, I'm not in control of this, or like anything that has to do on the field. I'm more focused on the athlete and making sure that they're feeling good, they're performing well, their body feels well, and then just kind of being like an outlet outside of the field. And just really showing them, like, I'm here for you and nothing else. Like, I just want the best for you. So that's why I really like the strength conditioning aspect of it the most.
And from a coach and player insight and combining the both, is there players, obviously, if they're full-time, but do you get part-time players that fit in around their schedule, which play in your professional capacities that you've been aware of?
Oh, what do you mean?
So, you might have a full-time contract, and
Yeah.
then you might have a new player come in and they're like, well, I can only do part-time, so you might have a part-time where I just do a certain amount of training and then a game. Do you have players like that fit in?
Yeah, especially at the beginning of my career, I coached everything from football to hockey to mom and dad to youth. But, like, if someone wants help, I'm more than happy to help them. Doesn't matter if they're full-time or part-time. It's more about helping them reach their potential that they want to reach.
And it's only because I tried to think of it, because I watch a seniors team that I work closely with, and they only play football sort of on a part-time basis, so they might train twice a week and then play on a Sunday. And then I know the manager is quite keen on their fitness being really high. So one of the sessions in a week might be pure fitness running. And I'm like, but you can't control the variables in the week. I said, you might be doing this contact and you might be increasing their fitness, but then tomorrow they might go and have a takeaway, and then the next day they're not eating so good, then the next day they're doing something sedentary. And then realistically, you're not controlling these variables, so how much impact is that fitness training over a part-time player really having? And I was just trying to understand from a fitness coach point of view, and someone who's played as well, it can be quite difficult for a part-time player in that sense to really impact their fitness unless they've got control over it.
Yeah, and that's something that has been a really big conversation in the strength and conditioning world, is like, okay, you come to me for an hour, what are you doing the rest of the day? What are you doing the rest of the week? And I was having a conversation with one of the girls I'm training right now with like speed, and I was telling her mom, like, we need to, I'm really big on implementing and teaching her these concepts. So like we review them every session, like, what is this for? Why do I do this? Like, and making them more autonomous and just kind of implementing, it's a lifestyle. That's kind of where I come from. It's not just, you're just a football player, we're only trained for football. Like at the end of the day, you're going to have to be healthy, and you should want to be healthy. Like, especially like with ACL tears, like I've done both my knees, and I know I can't not ever go to the gym, because at the end of the day, like they're going to be sore, they're going to be hurt. It's just not a good thing. So I'm really big on giving the athlete the tools to be autonomous and kind of instilling that importance. But like with the boys this year, like I started using Train Heroic. So it's like an online thing, so I can kind of check in with them and see how they're going. Because it does like their sleep, how they're feeling, if they're sore. So you kind of gauge where they're at, and then if they do their workout, they track it. So I can see who's on top of it and who's not. And then at the end of the day, it shows when you're at training. So I found that an easy way to kind of monitor the athletes, and kind of, especially with like the part-time, like making sure that they're doing the things that they need to do.
And it's good that you have that system where you can monitor it part-time and give them that support. And, you know, by having these conversations and instilling it within the athlete, you know, they have to take ownership over what their own fitness levels is, because, as we said, you can't control them on a day-to-day basis, and it's so difficult when it's part-time, and there's only so much you can do. But we need to really look at the impact of how much, you know, did that hour of running, just running around the pitch and doing all the fitness components, really have that big impact, because they're only part-time, and, you know, they could have more contact time with the ball or something that comes more naturally, and especially on a part-time basis. So it's a really interesting concept to sort of look at it from someone who's worked with, you know, players and does it, and you know, is qualified in that section.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of interesting things this year. Like when I was working with like the youth teams, we had one coach that he would come up to me and brag about how many laps he made the boys do in Ks and stuff, and I was like, why? What? He had no. He's like, well, that's what I had to do when I was. Blah, blah, blah. I was like, but why? Like, if you look at all of them, they're not happy. And are they doing any better? No. Like, running a bunch of Ks is like going to do anything. They need football. And so I found, like, especially just like a straight running session, like, if you look at it from like your personal perspective, that just sounds like ew. Like, I want to play. So it's just kind of microdosing the fitness throughout, because yes, one full session of running is better than none, but how do we make it so it's not daunting? Because when you say you're going to do 2 hours of running, you're going to be like, I don't want to come. If we say, oh, we're going to do 30 minutes and then play, or we're going to implement it some way throughout training. So like we do a block of 5 minutes and then we do sprints between in a block. It's making it so it's not a punishment. It's more of a, we're helping you get better and make sure that we're staying injury-free throughout the year.
And it's really interesting because I got two friends, and I got one friend and he'd just gone back to pre-season at the start, and he said there was a lot of fun-based activity games at seniors level for them to get back into. They'd done a bit of running, so they might have condensed it, as you said, but there was a lot of fun aspects around it which really helped their fitness. And then I was going back into the club which I just started that, and I was watching their first team session, And I was invited to go down to the first one back so we could see some of the 19s which are going in and just see how the first do it. And it was literally, it was the hottest day. I think it was like 28 degrees. I was stood with my assistant coach in the shade. I was like, it's so hot just standing here. But the seniors were getting kitted up, they're getting ready. And the coach said, none of you fall behind me. He said, I'm 50 years of age. If you fall behind me, you're going to be in for it. And it was literally so hot, and they just ran lap after lap after lap for an hour and a half. And I was just like, they must be so sick. And like, how and then he made them do it for a few weeks in terms of how the sessions went. I was like, why? That wouldn't entice me to even train. So it was definitely interesting to see the differences, and I was like, I'm so glad I'm not playing.
Yeah. I feel like there is a space for things like that, but I don't feel like it should be a requirement, because there's a way to do it, but you kind of have to have that relationship with your team and the athletes that you're coaching, to kind of have that mutual respect. Because sometimes, like, I don't mean this in a bad way, but with men, when I train men, like, coming from a female coach, it's sometimes hard, and so you kind of have to come out hard like that. Like, I remember doing like the 300 shuttles, and they were looking at me like, I hate you. And I was like, I can do this, you can do this. And everything has to have a purpose. So like, I really try to emphasize, like, I'm not making you run just because I feel like that today. I'm making you do this specific running to elicit a specific adaptation. So this is what I'm noticing from your games. This is what we need to work on, and this is how we're going to get there. So I think definitely coming from a coaching perspective, you need to have a purpose. And there is space for punishment sometimes, but that shouldn't be the core of what you're doing. It should be more of a growth kind of thing for your athletes, and creating that space where it's not, yes, it sucks, but we're not, I'm not doing this just because it's funny or gives me joy watching you run and run and run. It's just not fun.
And there's some really important concepts and messages within that, and it's great to again have that perspective and insight. And it's it has been great to speak to you about your own journey, about things that you go through and how it looks different on day to day, and how it works in a team, and how you approach games, and how you support your teammates, and going into new change room and environments, and the highs and some of the lows. And within the hour that we've been talking, there's been so much covered, and I'm really appreciative of your time, and it's been great to have honest and open insights from you. And we said an hour, and there's so much going on in your day in your life, so I'm just going to wrap up on some quick fire questions before I let you go. Okay, who is your role model?
For soccer, just life.
Anyone?
I love CR7. He's my favorite.
Fab.
Yeah.
If you could be a professional in any other sport, what would it be?
Football, like American football. Or I was thinking AFL, that's like Australian football. I like that one too.
Cool. Do you have any superstitions as a footballer?
Depends on my cleats. If I'm not playing well in cleats, I'll change them, and then if they're doing well, then I stay with those.
I sort of got that. I can never wear black football boots when I'm playing. I've just started to wear them as a coach, but I've never ever worn black boots because I've always had this superstition, like, they slow me down, they take my pace down by like 50%.
Isn't it funny how you just said, like, there's certain things you're like, nope, can't do it. I don't know why.
Yeah, I spoke to another footballer and he said that he has to tie his left shoelace up before his right one.
Oh, yeah, I'm really weird. Like, I have to put my socks, my, like, sleeves, and then my left, and then my right. And then I cannot put my shin guards in until right before we're going to play. I don't know why.
Cool. If you could go and play for any club in the world, who would it be?
Real Madrid is my favorite club.
Thought that would be an answer there.
Yeah.
Aside from all the countries that you have been in, and maybe your last answer, and it might be the same one, but if you could move to any country in the world, where would it be?
right now, Australia. I love Australia. But I don't know. I would have to say Australia.
Cool.
So far.
This could be male or female. It could be up to you. If you could play alongside any player, who would it be?
Sam Kerr.
Cool. Sam Kerr's wicked, and she plays for Chelsea.
Yeah, exactly.
If you wanted a fan to describe you in 3 words, what 3 words would they be?
Goal scorer. I like that one. Good teammate and determined.
Love it, love it. And if there's one thing that you want to be remembered for at the end of your career, what would it be?
Being a good person and teammate, I think that's more valuable. I mean, the accolades are great, and I'm a striker, and obviously, like, that's something that I want. But it's more important to me the impact that I make around the people around me.
Love it. And the final one, and this could be, you could have a 5-year contract and be really secure, or it could be having a really good contract with lots of money, or just being really happy, or representing a national team, or anything else. But what is your ultimate goal or dream now as a professional footballer?
Well, I just got my Luxembourg citizenship, so I want to kind of go for the national team. But literally, I'm in between pushing as high as I can go and then also enjoying what I'm doing. Because sometimes when you're pushing and you're not in the environment that's bringing the best out of you, that's something that I really noticed. So it's more finding the club that fits me best and at a high level that I'm happy with and I'm performing at.
I love it. And in terms of that then, what nations can you represent in terms of a national team?
Well, probably by the end of this year, I can do Luxembourg, US, and Mexico. So I'm working on my Mexican citizenship right now as well.
So in terms of that then, between Mexico, USA, and Luxembourg, if Mexico said, here's a call up next week, and Luxembourg said, would it be a difficult choice for you then?
Probably I would go more with Mexico because I know Spanish and it's right here. But Luxembourg is definitely interesting to me because they just qualified for their first Euros and the World Cup qualifiers for the first time this year. So there's a huge amount of growth that can happen there. And I think that's really exciting because it's not, there's no set way of doing things. So there's not a set system that I know of, whereas like Mexico's done things a certain way for so long, or US. So it's very raw, and I feel like that's exciting.
No, of course, and even that sounds exciting in itself. And when you sort of look at the possibilities of national team football, which hopefully is the next step for you, because you've had such a great career where you've been team captain, you've won the Golden Boot, you've broken awards, you've won leagues, you've been promoted, you've been top goal scorer, you've played some Champions League, you've been around the world. I think this all complements playing some national level. I think which would just be the icing of the cake for you and represent the amazing career that you've had so far.
Yeah, it's definitely in my eyesight this year for sure.
Well, I hope that it works out for you because just on paper you're fully deserving of it.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
No worries at all. But I really appreciate your time coming on. I'm so glad we could organise this, and it's been wonderful to meet someone with such a great personality as well as being such a good footballer, and someone who teams that that you play for, they're so lucky to have someone as supportive as you and so caring. And I wish you the best of luck in your career, and I'm glad that we can see each other on socials and what we're doing. But again, I'm so grateful that you've had the time to come on today.
No, thank you this has been great to connect and share, I guess that's the best way to put that. I always love making good connections, so this was really great. So thank you for your time.
No worries, it's been a pleasure. Well, thank you very much, and take care.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
And I hope your grandpa is okay.
Oh, thank you very much. Cheers.
Cheers.
See you later.
Bye.